Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter, and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I host key actors from the companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. Places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast in your podcast app of choice.
Hey strangers, be sure to keep an eye on your feeds, because starting this month, One Strange Thing will be releasing every week. You'll see some of our classic episodes in the mix, but also plenty of new weird tales for you to sink your odd little teeth into. Oh, and this episode, it does discuss hunting, though it's not covered in any gruesome detail. I'm Laurah Norton, and this is One Strange Thing, the show where we search the nation's news archives for stories that can't quite be explained. One thing that we do regret, strangers, is that we did not pay enough attention back in school to the geographical wonders of the states that exist outside our own region. For instance, it's likely well known to many of you that Central Oregon is home to an area that we've read are called the Lava Lands. And per Central Oregon's tourism website, a place that was, quote, created about 7,000 years ago after a volcanic explosion of lava butt, a miles-wide sea of jagged lava rock was left behind, creating a unique geological landscape. It's so beautiful and it's so alien that, quote, it served as a training ground for moon-bound astronauts. Our story begins in that same ancient volcanic landscape and stretches southeast of Bend into the Fort Rock territory, which is important because we need to talk about something that happened there across various counties in the early part of the 20th century. It involved a bear, apparently a very fascinating bear, a lava bear, in fact. Though often associated with the town of Bend, the strange creature was the obsession of naturalists, hunters, and media all over the state. This was a time when the U.S. government organizations like the Bureau of Biological Survey, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service were still relatively new. Based on a scholarly paper that we read in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the U.S. Biological Survey was very focused on identification and taxonomy. When something truly remarkable was cataloged, it gained attention. Perhaps that's why the lava bear was so very interesting. So, with that in mind, let's travel to 1917, and more specifically to Alkali Lake in Lake County, Oregon. A quick note as we get into the discussion. The sources, they tend to use black and brown bear rather interchangeably, and they bring up grizzlies too, a type of brown bear. Just go with the variation. Okay, according to the Oregon Sportsman, a local woman had, the winter before, trapped an unusually small bear. Not a cub, but a full-grown animal. And then, in May, a North Lake County shepherd also came upon a very small bear, and in an effort to protect his flock, he shot it. This was not unusual for the area. There were plenty of black bears in the state and a history of grizzlies, though they'd been scant for some time. But what came next? It was strange. That shepherd who treed and shot a bear near his flock? Per the Sportsman, he was surprised to discover the animal, which he thought might be a cub, something that we find personally troubling, appeared to be something else altogether. According to the Sportsman, it was, quote, a little bear that looked just like any other bear, with the exception of his size and color. His hair has the appearance of wool more than hair, and its color is of a light buckskin cast. He's gray around the nose, and his teeth and claws are worn. A cub, which the shepherd was pretty sure he'd spotted, would of course not have worn down teeth or gray at its muzzle. And this time, it wasn't a report without evidence, because this shepherd decided to preserve his discovery. Sort of. According to accomplished naturalist Stanley Jewett, it, quote, was skinned and turned over for mounting to Mr. Burt Campbell, a taxidermist. I examined it just after it was mounted. No notes were taken at the time, but I remember the specimen as being not unlike any other bear, except that its fur was rather woolly and the color of light buckskin. In size, it was a cub, but in general appearance, it looked like an adult animal, and I remarked at the time that it looked like a runt. Remember Stanley Jewett's name. He's important to the story. But for now, we need to discuss a few more points. According to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, a brown bear cub is around 50 pounds at 6 months old, and an adult 400 to over 1,000. The sportsman reported that the shepherd's bear was around 25 pounds max, which is strange considering its apparent age. And we should remind you, it's woolly yellowish fur. None of this is indicative of the average brown bear, which are, per the National Park Service, brown, surprise, or yes, occasionally reddish-brown in color. The coat is thick and notably water-repellent, but it is not woolly. This was notable enough for a local Lake County businessman to arrange to have the taxidermied bear mounted for display in his store. It was there for locals to admire, but it also drew scientists. And, of course, the press. And it wouldn't be long until it was nicknamed the lava bear, with a whole theoretical backstory attached to its appearance. We already told you the naturalist Stanley Jewett's opinion on this bear. It was a runt. That was one theory, but there were others. Although Jewett worked for the U.S. Biological Survey at the time, he was not the first nor the last word on the subject, at least not in the public sphere. The person who brought the odd little bear to wider attention was not a scientist, but rather a Central Oregon resident, Guy Ingram, who decided to write a piece for the Oregon Sportsman. He began by giving the bear a nickname, Teddy, which even in 1917 was pretty well-worn territory, and then he titled his article, The Little Bear Wonder of Oregon. He wrote that, quote, "My theory is that the lineage of this bear will be traced back to the common black or brown bear of the Cascades. Possibly many years ago, a pair of brown bears wandered from the Cascade Mountains, and a family of brown bears was reared on a section of this immense desert. The old ones may have been killed, or in any event passed away, leaving the young to breed later. And generation after generation, the race has been feebly perpetuated, largely through inbreeding in this dry, waste country, with no water and meager forage, until they have dwarfed to their present size, and would ultimately become extinct." By desert, of course, he meant the lava beds. And it wasn't long until Teddy became the lava bear. And where there's one of something, people will become very interested in looking for others. According to Stanley Jewett's later writing on the subject, the mounted specimen of the lava bear was then sent to Washington, D.C., where it was to be examined by Dr. C. Hart Merriam, the former chief of the Biological Survey and the recognized authority on North American bear classification. So basically, the best possible person to check out the lava bear and offer an opinion on Ingram's whole tiny bear in the desert theory. He was an interesting guy too, both historically and bearically speaking, in that he was perhaps best known for his enthusiasm for identifying new species. In fact, according to the Boone and Crockett Club, quote, Merriam's largest project was on the North American bears. In 1896, he believed there were 8 species of grizzly, coastal and inland bears, and by 1914, the number was up to 30, and by 1918, he proposed 86 species and subspecies of grizzly bears. Now, this is a position that scientists have referred to as splitting, and Merriam was a big fan of it. Yet, according to Jewett, upon examining the lava bear, Merriam decided that it was, quote, an immature animal, possibly an abnormal specimen of the common black bear. Abnormal specimen being, of course, very different from new type of bear, and you might think that's where the whole subject would have been settled, but, strangers, you would be wrong. In 1920, an expedition was arranged to try and bag another specimen for further scientific study, and its leader was someone pretty interesting. Today's episode is brought to you by Vinted. So, those clothes you're not wearing anymore, someone else would love them. Vinted is the app that gets them out of your closet and into someone else's, and puts a little extra money in your pocket too. And that sounds perfect for me because, honestly, my wardrobe has gotten completely out of hand. I absolutely love clothes. I always have. The problem is I have way more than my closet can hold. And right now it's packed so tight I can't fit one more thing. And that's a shame because I'm already planning my fall wardrobe, and there are pieces I've been dying to bring home. I know the fix is to clear out what I'm not wearing, and I also know that's the part I never get around to because it always feels like such a chore. So, Vinted is where I'm starting. I've been going through the app and it looks super simple and fun to use. You photograph what you want to sell, you write a quick description, you set your price, and you post it. That's it. The item's listed and it's ready for someone to buy. And when it sells, Vinted sends you a prepaid label, so you just pack it up and ship it. And with Vinted, there are no seller fees, so what you earn from a sale is yours to keep. The app's free to download too. That means the money from the clothes I'm clearing out goes straight toward those new pieces I've been eyeing. Ready to clean out your closet and make some extra money? Download the Vinted app for free and start listing. With no seller fees, you keep every dollar you earn. And for a limited time, enjoy free shipping in the US on Vinted. According to a Deschutes National Forest publication from 1969, quote, a nationally known figure, Irvin S. Cobb, author, humorist, and sportsman, came to the Deschutes country in search of a creature he called the lava bear. That hunt, later reported in the Saturday Evening Post, attracted national attention. Cobb formed a party and decided to set out from Bend. Perhaps he had some good reason to do so. Based on his own later reporting, a few other alleged lava bears had been spotted and even caught in that area. He was joined by an assortment of people, but most importantly, A.W. Wisnett, W.P. Vandervert, and N.G. Jacobson. Wisnett was the editor of the local paper, the Bend Press, and he served as their local guide. W.P. Vandervert was a rancher and bear expert, a rancher who traveled with, as the Oregonian claimed, the first pack of bear dogs in the United States. And then we come to N.G. Jacobson. He was not a rancher or a news editor. Actually, he had worked for the government, past tense. Because, as the Deschutes National Forest Guide explained, quote, planning to join the Cobb Party in Bend in the nationally publicized hunt for a lava bear was a Deschutes National Forest official, Norman G. Jacobson, supervisor, and he notified the regional office in Portland of his plans. But the month was August, near the middle of the fire season. Regional officers vetoed Jacobson's proposal to accompany the bear hunters. He resigned on August 16th and joined the bear hunting party. So, why was he willing to give all of that up? Well, he believed in the lava bear, and he believed he'd already had some proof. Per the Morning Oregonian, he was in possession of what they, described as, quote, a head in a fair state of preservation from what he said was a lava bear. He presented it to Irvin Cobb, the writer and humorist, as a gift. So, let's get into their trip. According to the Oregon Daily Journal, on August 16th, they set out in a, quote, Studebaker Big Six placed at the disposal of the party, and it has been with this machine that the hunting has been done. About 1,000 pounds of luggage and equipment has been with the party on a trailer, making rather an inconvenient load for the roads with which the game parts of the state are infested. They had also had some conversation with locals regarding the lava bears, and also the best way to approach this hunt. According to Cobb's own column, quote, a man who knows a good deal at first hand about the mammals of this continent told me that he felt sure the lava bear was a distinct species rather than a subspecies. And for the life of him, he said, he could not understand why the cunning little scamp had escaped being officially card-indexed. And for the hunting advice, well, we'll just tell you what the Oregonian wrote on the subject. Quote, Cobb met one chap at Fort Rock who informed Cobb that if he met a lava bear, he needn't shoot the creature. Just kick him to death, was the advice. We'll just move on from that. But the point was, we think, to reinforce the relatively small creature that they were looking for. And when they finally saw the lava bed desert, it apparently made a big impression on Cobb, who wrote, quote, Imagine a sea that is crested with breakers and tempest-tossed into all manner of shapes. But it is not a sea of water. Imagine it as a sea of gray rock eternally congealed into the aspect it took on as it hardened after it poured forth from the bowels of the earth, pocked with sinkholes, furrowed with troughs, seamed with fissures, lifted into sharply serrated waves, then dropping away into caves and caverns so deep that in their lower chambers, the whole year through, ice may be found. Strange and beautiful and worthy of exploration. But their trip there and back included no sign of the tiny bear that had allegedly evolved to survive on that terrain. They fished where there was water, and they ran into 2 brown bears in the forest. But that was it. Eventually, they returned to Bend. That was in September, and Cobb was without his prize. That didn't stop him from speaking with the press or sharing a startling new theory he'd developed along the way. Despite not bagging his quarry, and perhaps because he'd come into possession of that supposed specimen, the preserved head offered to him by the former forestry agent, Cobb still came to some ideas. According to the Bend Bulletin, he believed that the lava bear was related to a small type of grizzly that had been seen in Idaho, and more than that they were, quote, the last survivors of the sun bear, a species he claimed had been identified by local Native Americans, and so named for their proclivity for, quote, basking in the sun. The paper claimed that, quote, this species was formerly found throughout the lava country of Oregon and California. And the bulletin added that Cobb, quote, hoped that the attention of the Smithsonian Institute may be sufficiently aroused to start a more scientific investigation of the subject than he had been able to make. We must pause here to discuss this whole sun bear thing. If you are at all familiar with funny animal memes, then you've probably seen videos of sun bears standing in a weirdly human-like way, almost as if they're people in bear suits. You have probably also noticed that those videos were taken at zoos, both in the US and abroad. That's because sun bears are classified as a vulnerable species, one step up from endangered. According to the San Diego Zoo, they are, quote, the smallest of the world's 8 bear species, about half the size of American black bears. Their common name comes from the white or yellowish crescent markings on their chest, which many people think looks like the rising or the setting sun. So, not so named because they enjoy lying around in the sun. And there's another little issue. The sun bear is native to Southeast Asia. Based on all the sources that we checked, there has never been any sort of sun bear species in North America. We also cannot find evidence of the alleged Native American stories that should be around regarding a version of the creature in Oregon. So, where did Cobb get such an idea? Honestly, we don't know. It might have been encouraged by locals he spoke to. How seriously they took him is impossible to say. In his own column on the subject, he treated the idea of sun bears in North America, albeit extinct, as an absolute fact, and wrote that, quote, if the present writer is correct in his amateurish and totally unscientific deductions, the sun bear did not totally disappear. He merely withdrew from society as civilization became more complex and went far back into the lava beds where he might enjoy the privacy that he craved. Considering that Cobb was a humorist, it's tempting to say that he did not take himself very seriously. Then again, he went to quite a lot of trouble to travel all the way to Central Oregon and wander around in the woods. In fact, he reported that he lost 20 pounds while he was on the trek. Cobb's article ran, of course, in the Saturday Evening Post, and that enormous readership spread the story quite efficiently. The reactions, they were mixed. Some were amused and others were slow to totally dismiss the idea. But most of the press was skeptical, and in December of 1920, the Oregonian newspaper's editorial board totally dismissed the idea. Another paper, the East Oregonian, put it simply. In February of 1921, they wrote, quote, Cobb's lava bear was nothing but a myth. Being a humorist, Cobb is no doubt enjoying their efforts. Which, fair, but here's the thing about the lava bear. However much the press wanted to dismiss it, the story wouldn't quite disappear. Because even while the newspapers were calling it a myth, the U.S. Biological Survey was taking it seriously enough to do something about it. In April of 1921, they sent a man named Elmer Williams into Central Oregon, officially to deal with a coyote problem, but with a secondary mission: find the lava bear once and for all. He came back in May, empty-handed, but he wasn't ready to give up. Per the Oregon Daily Journal, Williams reported, quote, "I guess it's a little too early for the lava bear to come out, but we have a complete circle of traps 50 miles in circumference around that lava field, and if there's a lava bear there, we'll sure get him." They did not get him. And then, of course, there were the scientists. Stanley Jewett had been watching the story since 1917. He was the naturalist who'd examined that taxidermied bear and declared it a runt. In October of 1922, 5 years later, he published a formal scientific paper in the Merlit, the Journal of the Pacific Northwest Bird and Mammal Society. His verdict? Quote, "Since the summer of 1917, I have left no stone unturned to secure data to substantiate the statements of old-time stockmen, trappers, and others regarding this unusual form. But I am unable to find that anything except the common black bear and the grizzly now or ever did inhabit that section of Oregon. The grizzly is gone, never to return, but nearly every spring and summer, one or more black or brown bears have been killed in the lava region. Several have been taken by biological survey hunters since 1917, but all have been normal black bears," end quote. Between the press and the science, the lava bear had nowhere left to go. Except in that summer of 1923, a government trapper named Alfred Andrews, working the predatory animal district out of Fort Rock in Lake County, he shot something in the lava beds, and he sent the head and hide to the Biological Survey's Portland office. Per the Oregonian, he had, quote, "shot what he believes to be the said lava bear," and sent it in for, quote, "decision." Stanley Jewett identified it as a black bear and forwarded it to Washington. The response came back in July of 1923, and the Oregonian published the letter in full. It confirmed a small adult female black bear who was fully grown. Another specimen found in 1924, it was ruled the same. That should have been the end of the story. A regional curiosity, a humorous theory, a scientific consensus that arrived at the most ordinary possible answer. The lava bear should be a footnote, like so many other strange stories that crowd the columns of early 20th century newspapers. It should be, except for one strange thing. During the years of lava bear hunting, studying, and unfortunately taxidermying, something interesting had occurred. The town of Bend, Oregon had become very fond of their new species of bear. They seemed unwilling to let it go, and ultimately, it just didn't seem to matter that the tiny lava bed dweller did not actually exist. By the time all of that was sorted, the lava bear had firmly embedded itself in the hearts and merchandise of the city. In November of 1923, the very same month that the Biological Survey's letter came back, still hedging on what exactly the lava bear was, the Bend Commercial Club voted to name its new booster organization the Lava Bears. They had considered other options, like flycasters or irrigators or foresters, volcanoes, mountaineers. Instead, they went with our favorite little lava dweller. OSAA Today reported that by 1930, Bend High School had adopted the lava bear as its official team name. As recently as 2026, per Central Oregon Daily News, Bend Senior High School's lava bears were competing in a national mascot tournament against 63 other schools, with their community rallying behind them. Bend High School's athletic director, Ricky Rodriguez, explained that, quote, "It's been the central focus of this community for decades. And if you want merchandise, they have it. You can be Team Lava Bear too." And that is the fun, we think, local lore, our modern take on old stories, especially ones that are ridiculous and fun and weird, carry us through the times that are Well, none of the above. A team of lava bears or Dover demons or New Jersey devils or krakens, all real organizations by the way, they're a fun way of keeping our local history alive. Although we do hear people are disappointed to find out that the mascot is not a literal bear dripping with molten magma, which we understand. Because, well, that would be pretty frickin' cool. We hope you'll join us next time for another real-life story from the fine print of America's local papers, from the lives of regular people just like you and me, except for one strange thing. One Strange Thing is an independent podcast. To support the show and to hear more of the entirely true and enticingly peculiar, you can check out our premium offerings. If you'd like to subscribe on Apple Premium, you'll get both premium and ad-free and early access episodes, along with ad-free and early access to our other podcast, The Fall Line. If you subscribe to Patreon, you'll find ad-free early releases of our regular episodes, a monthly full-length bonus episode, giveaways, and blog posts. We hope you'll check out one of these options and support the show. There's a link in the show notes. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, be sure to check your subscription and make sure you're following the show. Otherwise, Apple updates mean that it may disappear from your feed. Be sure to use our promo codes. And if you enjoy One Strange Thing, please take a moment to leave us a great rating or review on your favorite podcast app, because that really helps.